So thanks for coming along to my Excel webinar. I'm a little bit nervous. I don't normally do them on this, but we'll give it a go. Feel free to shout out any questions along the way. It's pretty detailed, but I'll go through sections individually to make it a little bit easier to follow. Some of the things we'll cover is generating random data in case you need to do testing and stuff. The differences between fixed formulas and variable formulas, a lot of different formulas and how to make things work for you.
Would you like to introduce yourself, or would you like me to introduce you?
You can do it.
Oh, okay. I love how you just dived in there then.
Oh, I thought, yeah, whatevs.
It's how we
or casual.
Yeah. We're going casual right now.
Yep.
So welcome everyone to today's Virtually Yours session. We've got Hanna Finlay here from Offsite Reception, and Hanna is a self-professed Excel geek and gets ridiculously excited about the things in Excel, which make my brain explode. But it's one of those programs that you can achieve a lot in, and so we asked Hanna to come along and share some of her tips and strategies around how to get more out of Excel. And so Hanna asked a few questions to the group before today's session and has created something to help everybody get more out of Excel. So thanks so much, Hanna.
You're very welcome. I'm looking forward to it. I just hope I can remember how to use Excel.
That would be handy.
Cool. Yeah, so I guess I'll just go in. So I have done a workbook, so if anyone's watching this later and wants to follow along with a copy of it, you can. Just send me a message with your email address and I'll send it through. I'm going to go over quite a lot of different information. So if you do have the workbook and you've got any questions, just yell out. Am I still on? Have I been disconnected? Can you hear me?
You're all good.
Oh, good, cool. It just disappeared for some reason. Okay. So what I've done in this workbook is I stalked the directory yesterday and grabbed a few business names and people. And then I just randomly generated employees for them. So this data, some of it is real, most of it's not. It's just something for us to play with. So the first thing I wanted to show you, which is really handy, is how to generate random data. Random data is good if you're creating a spreadsheet and you just want to see if your formulas are working without actually having the data that you're going to be using. This particular part we're going to be doing is we're going to cover how to freeze rows and columns so that you can see things a little bit better on your screen, how to get the random data, sorting, getting minimum and maximum numbers, and I'll show you why they're important a little bit later. We're going to look at some VLOOKUPs and how to merge formulas together. So for those following on at home, I'll show you how to freeze the rows. So you can see there's a lot of data here with information. It's hard to view when you're scrolling down. So the first thing we can do is go up to View, and we can freeze panes and freeze the top row. And what that means is when we scroll down, your headings stay. So you're still going to know what the content of each column is relating to. Now, as you move across the spreadsheet, you can see that we sort of lose a lot of information that we might need. So the other option you can do, unfreeze that, is to freeze the first column. And that way you'll always have your first column there. The last one I'll show you, I'll unfreeze these, is if you want it to freeze in a certain place. So we might want to be able to see both of those columns plus our top row at the same time. So you can actually select to the right of the columns that you want to save and underneath the heading that you want to save. And once you click in that cell, you can freeze panes, and that'll let us scroll down with our heading and it'll let us scroll across with our columns. That's probably the easiest way to be able to see everything on your screen. I'm going to leave it like that so we can work it out. So in this example, I'm going to go through how to assign random numbers and how to join formulas and stuff. So basically, if we pretend that all of these people are going to be assigned a city to work on, we might be doing outgoing calls, we might be doing research on certain cities, and all of these people in our database, we might want them assigned to a specific city. We don't want to let them pick it, we're just going to randomly assign them. We can actually assign them random numbers, and you can see over here I've grabbed a whole bunch of cities and I've assigned them all a number. So to allocate a random number to the people, we can use a formula that is rand between. Excuse me. Now, rand between can be done a number of different ways. We can either select our lowest number, which because these are sorted in number order, we can select number 1. And we put a comma in, so we can select our top number, and that'll be our highest number down here, which is 91, and we can close the bracket. So that'll assign Rosie the number 43. When you're using this random number generator formula, anytime you do anything in the spreadsheet, it's going to recalculate that formula. So if I was to click over here, it's going to change that number. That's okay for now because it's just using random numbers. The other way we can do it is to actually type in those numbers. So instead of selecting our cell and selecting our cell down here, we can type in that we want a random number between 1 and 91. And again, it does the same thing. The other thing we can do is if we've got a list of numbers, I'm just going to delete this one and I'll sort these by population. Just to give you the example, we can do a custom sort here and we can pick the column we want to sort by. So let's say, so these aren't, oh, that actually did them in a normal, let's custom sort. We'll sort them by city. So now these numbers are all marked up. If we have thousands and thousands of numbers, we're not going to know what the start number is and what the end number is. So we can actually use a combination of formulas. So we're going to do our rand between. We don't know what our top number, we don't know what our bottom number is. So we can find that out by querying this column. So I'm going to have a look at what the minimum number in this column is. So equals min. We'll open our bracket. We'll highlight the whole column and close our bracket. And that'll tell us that the lowest number in this column is a 1. And then we can do the exact same. So we'll go maximum because we want the highest number. You can use your arrow keys to go down and then press tab and that'll open the bracket for you. I find the keyboard a lot easier. And again, we're just going to highlight the column. We're going to close the bracket and enter. So that'll tell us 1 and 91. Now we'll do our rand again, rand between. And we can use that to select our minimum and our maximum cells. Stop me if I'm going too fast, please do. And our random formula will work. For this formula to work though, we need to be referencing this cell and this cell. But if we want to join those into the one formula, and this is how I find doing formulas easy, is to sort of do them all separately and then merge them all together. So because we can see this cell here is referencing H2, which is this one here, our minimum, we can actually take the formula out of this cell and we won't include the equals, but we'll copy this over, Control C to copy. Now, when you're in a formula, it's always good to press escape to get out of the formula before you do anything else. We can then click into this formula and that thing that we just copied, we can replace our H2 here. Now we don't need that cell at all anymore. We can do the same with our maximum number and escape. We'll copy into here and we'll replace I2 because that's what it's relating to here. So we'll replace I2 and we'll Control V to paste that in. And now we don't need that cell at all anymore. That formula is called a nested formula. So it's a formula within a formula. basically. So we're still getting the same result. It's just rather than having 3 columns to get that information, we only need the one cell. This one we can do, we'll copy this down here so everyone's got their cities. So this little, I don't know how beginner you guys are, so please tell me if I'm being too basic with what I'm teaching you, but when you've got a cell selected that's got a formula in it, you can hover over and get to this little square box, and you can see the cursor changes a little bit. That allows you to pull the formula down to the end of the data. Okay, so now everyone's got a random number assigned to them, but we actually want to assign them a city. So this is where we can join our formulas in, and we'll use a VLOOKUP to get the city that's associated with the number that they've been assigned. So to do a VLOOKUP is basically looking at the value of a cell. Let me open the chat. I think the people, cool. Okay, I'll try to keep an eye on the chat, but Rosie, if anyone pops something in there that I need to to know about, please let me know, because I'm going between 3 screens here.
Oh, good.
Cool.
Yeah.
Right. So a VLOOKUP, we're basically going to go look at this number here. We're going to give it an area to look, and we want the value of that number, which will be the second column. So a VLOOKUP is, again, you can start typing equals VL, and you can see that the only formula that comes up for that option is VLOOKUP. So if you press tab, you don't have to type the whole thing. Now the lookup value is we're going to look up this number. Then we always press comma because we're on to our next area. This is going to be the table array. So this is where we want to look for that number and where we want to get the result for that number. So in this case, I can highlight L and M because we're just after the city associated with that number. Then we finish with our table array, so we can hit comma. This column index number, this is asking us what column do you want us to bring back the result for. And in this case, I've only selected 2 and I want it to bring back the second column. So I put in 2 and comma. Now in Excel, it'll give you the options to get an approximate match or exact match. I have never really found myself ever needing the approximate match, so I always do exact because I don't want it to bring back if it's roughly 82. I want it to bring back the result if it is 82. And for me, it's just easier to type a 0. 0 is always exact, no variation, 0 variation. A 0 is the same as false. So we can close that. And we can see that that now brings back the city that's associated with number 46. And because these aren't, oh, there we go, nice and easy to find. It's not always. So we can see that that formula's worked. Now again, as we did with our minimum and maximum, this particular formula here is relying on this column. So we don't want to do that if we have to delete this column. We don't want to have thousands and thousands of columns if we can help it. So we want to get rid of the reference to G2, which is this one here, and put the formula in there. So we can copy our entire formula. So remember, these are the ones that we merged the formulas together before. We copy everything after rand between, everything after equals. So highlight that and Control C. We press Escape to cancel out of that formula. The reason we do that is if I copy this and then click somewhere else, it thinks I'm trying to edit the formula. So if you do that, you can press Escape, everything goes back to normal. So we'll copy that, Escape, we'll jump into our formula over here and we're going to replace G2. We'll hit Enter and that will now not require anything in that formula. So we can then copy this all across and put it in the correct cell. We no longer need our randomly generated numbers because our formula is complete. We don't need this. We can actually click and drag this one down and every person should be allocated a city. How did everyone go with that one so far?
unbelievable. Oh my
And
God, that is so cool. I totally what you're saying, and it's all new information.
awesome, awesome. No one's ever going to know or remember how to type that up to make that happen.
Oh,
So probably the hottest tip I can do is do every formula separate and then just replace your references.
yeah, that's brilliant.
Yep. Beautiful. Okay, so what I'm also going to do is just to show, once you've generated your random data or whatever formula it is, if you want that to be fixed, so you don't want these to ever change again, it is always worth copying the whole column and Control C, and then right click, and this little one here pastes the values. So it's going to get rid of the formulas and it's going to save the actual words so that that data doesn't ever change again. That's a handy one if you're dealing with random stuff, or even just a formula to get some information, and then you want it to be fixed information. So I am going to pop the state in here. It's a basic VLOOKUP, but it comes into the workshop later. So we'll do our equals VLOOKUP and tab. We're going to look up, I've moved my columns. We're going to look up the city and comma. We want to find out what state that city is. So we're going to highlight our city because that's what we're looking at. And we want to bring back the second column, which is state, which is column 2. And we want it to be exact, which is 0 variation. That'll bring up the states. And again, this here, if we double click it, so before I showed you how you could click and drag to get your autofill, but if you double click it, it's actually going to copy that all the way down to the end of your data. So if it's a massive spreadsheet, you don't have to drag it the whole way. All right, so what else have I got here? So we can forget the city, the states. I just put that in because I'm going to show you something a little bit later and I need them there. But I'm going to talk about joining data. So a lot of the time we might need specific cells to be in the one cell, or we might want some words followed by data that's in a cell followed by some more words. And we don't want to have to manually type them all up. So this example I'm going to show you is how to substitute data that's in a cell, how to work with uppercase, propercase and lowercase. You can see I've purposely made this spreadsheet awful. It gives me the twitches to see my name in lowercase and other people in uppercase and some that doesn't even make sense. So I'm going to show you how to fix those without having to overtype them, and also how to join data that's in more than one cell and how to hard code information. And for this example, I'm going to create email addresses for everyone. So let's start with basically, well, actually I'll show you how to do the upper and lowercase first. So you can see Rosie's is proper case. So the first letters are all capitals followed by lowercase. For email addresses though, you generally don't have emails in upper and lowercase. They're only in lowercase. The easiest way to do that is equals lower, and then we'll tab, and then we can arrow across and close. And that's going to put everything in lowercase. That's going to be for every email address. So we can double click and copy that down. We also want to do it for the company. So I can actually click and drag this formula across. And what Excel does is, because we've moved across one column to the right, it moves the formula over to one column to the right. So you could see this one was for B2, and this one has automatically moved it across to C2. But we want the company. We wanted it to go left. And one of the easiest ways that I do to change which cell we want is you can double click in the one that you want to change, and then you can actually, when it changes to those arrows, you can click and drag it across to the right cell and hit enter. So that's how we get them into lowercase. Proper and uppercase is pretty much the same. So I'm just going to use a random cell here. If we wanted everything in uppercase, you type upper, you pick which cell you want in uppercase, and that'll work for everything. And then proper case. So if your client or someone sends you a whole bunch of data and it's messy like my data here, that is a simple way to fix the data so it looks better. And then you can literally copy and, like we said, paste special values just to make it look better for them. It's always good to have, oh yeah, in this case, how can I separate first and surname into two? Oh, yeah, I'll show you that one. That's not part of it, but I'll actually show you it in this column that I've just created here. So yeah, splitting data, it's actually, it's good, but it can be difficult. The reason being is you can see all these people here have two names. Susie here has a third. So we're going to run into a little bit of trouble because it does look at spaces when we do that. But the quickest way to do it is to highlight the whole column. You can go data and then text to columns. You can give it a fixed width. So let's say every single column had the same number of letters, which isn't going to happen usually. You can give it a fixed width and then you can select physically where you want it to change. But in this case, let me just make these actual, get rid of the formulas. In this case, we want it to separate first from last. So we're going to use a space. So text to columns here, we're going to do a delimited, which just basically means we can pick whichever character we want to identify where that's going to split. So some data might be separated by a comma. In this case, it's going to be a space. So we'll hit that and we can go finish, and that moves them. So you can see Susie's name went out over 3 columns. You just have a couple to manually adjust if that was the case. So that's how you can separate them into separate columns. Was that clear enough? Clear as mud? I don't know why I didn't include that one in my webinar. Okay, so let's follow on. Now we've got everyone in lowercase. We want to give them their email addresses. So let's insert a column here because we're going to have Rosie Shiloh at virtually yours. Oh. And we'll make it .com.au. So for these, there's a few different ways. We're going to use a function called concatenate, and it basically just means join this with this, with this, with this, and we tell it what to join. So I'll show you a few different ways. Some people find some things easier, and I'd like to show you all the different ways so it's easiest for you. In this case, we've got to remove the spaces here because we don't want Rosie space Shiloh at virtually space yours. So we're actually going to substitute the space for a no space. Now to do that, I'm going to use another random column here. We're going to put in equals, a substitute. We want to look at Rosie Shiloh here. We're going to substitute that cell and everything in that cell that is a space. Now in formulas, anything you type is considered a formula unless you've got inverted commas around it. So in this case, I'm going to do inverted commas and a space and then inverted commas again because that's the old text. We're going to comma to get our next section, which is the new text. And again, inverted commas, but I'm not going to put a space anymore because I want to replace the space with a no space. And then we'll close our bracket. Now we've got Rosie Shiloh all in one here. We do want her to be in lower case. So we can actually merge these two cells together. So instead of just looking at B2, we're going to use our substitute here, which replaces our space. So replace our B2 with our substitute. Now we've got Rosie Shiloh in lowercase and there's no space. And we can do the same with this column here. So it's referring to A2. So I can double click in this one because this is our working formula to get rid of the spaces. I can move this over here. So we're looking at the virtually yours. And then I can copy our formula that we've created to substitute the spaces, and I can put it in instead of A3. Oh, do that in the right row. So now we don't need this anymore. So now I've got Rosie Shiloh, all one word, all lowercase, at virtually yours, all lowercase one word, .com.au. Now I want to join all of these so we've got an email address. So I'll do it in the right column this time. And the function for this one is a concatenate function. So I want it to join text 1 with text 2 with text 3 with text 4, blah, blah, blah. So I can go join that with that, with that, with that. And we've got the email address. So does anyone have any questions so far that you'd like me to run over?
Just a quick one.
Mm-hmm.
When you took the space out of Rosie Shiloh and virtually yours,
Mm-hmm.
why did you refer back to the other cells? Why couldn't you just use the cells that were already there that had Rosie Shiloh? Like,
because normally you wouldn't have had these in the first place. I was just referring it to what the original data was.
right, awesome. Yes.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. Yep. Cool. So now we've got our full email address, but again, you can see these are still referencing other cells. So this is where we can actually build these formulas we created over here and build them into here. So our first one here is G2. Yes, nested, very smart. Let's go nesting these.
I feel so clever. Understanding it, not because
Yep. Cool. So let's start nesting these formulas. So the first cell reference we've got here is G2. So we're going to go over here and we're going to grab our formula minus the equals. So every formula should really only have one equals in it. Otherwise it's going to throw you willies. So we'll copy that and we'll hit escape to get out of that formula. We'll jump back into our email and we'll replace it there and hit enter. Now the next one we want to replace is H2. H2 is not a formula though. I just typed in the @ symbol. So you can actually hard code, well, I'm going to get rid of this so you can show that it's working. You can actually hard code text into these concatenate formulas rather than having to have a cell that you refer to. So remember before when I was talking about text in formulas, how we have to have the inverted comma? Then I can put the @ symbol there and the inverted comma, and that replaces the need for this column completely. You can see that there's no boxes surrounding that column. Anything with a box around it is included in the formula, but because I've overtyped that and hard coded the @ symbol, I don't need that column anymore. So I can hit enter, and to prove it, I can delete that and the @ still stays there. The next one we'll replace is I2, which is this formula here. So I'm going to copy that, hit escape, jump into here and replace I2, enter, and then I don't need that anymore. And then I'm going to hard code the .com.au as well. So I can copy that if I want to because I'm a little bit lazy. J2, we'll use our inverted commas because it's fixed text. We'll paste it and end our inverted commas. And we don't need any of that anymore. So then if I double click on this, it's going to pop all of that down here. Sorry, I'm just reading a comment here from Louisa. If there's a mistake in the source data, I don't think you're going to be able to know that. If this is coming from a client, if I had a client send me this list, I'm not going to really know that Jerry's full name is Geraldine or Rosie might be Rosemary. You've got to deal with the data that you've got. You can't really predict what someone... Yes. Oh, is that your full name? I'm going to call you Rosemary every time I'm annoyed with you now. Never, so it doesn't matter.
You've got me now.
Yeah, so you've just got to deal with the data you've got. If it's incorrect, you can't really fix that with a formula unless you know what it should be, and there's too many variables if data is incorrect. You've just got to go with what you've got. There is another formula I've got here that is if they only wanted to use the first name. Do you think that this is enough on this, or did you want to know how to get rid of surnames within a formula? I don't want to overwhelm with too much info.
Wouldn't we?
Get rid of the surname.
Wouldn't we
Cool.
just, so I would have just exported to columns and the first name column.
Yeah, so what would happen with that is then you've permanently got a first name and a last name column, whereas you might, the client might still want it all to be in the one column. They might not want first name, last name. Yeah.
Copy B cell, G, export columns and create extra ones. But is there another one to do it?
Sure is.
Cool.
So there's a formula that basically tells Excel to look in this cell for a space and only show me everything left of that space. So that one is left. We're going to look in this cell here. Then we're going to find, we'll open bracket again because this is another nested one. We're going to find a space, which is the inverted commas, space, inverted commas. And we have to look in B2. We'll close our bracket. Now it's going to find the space, but that's included as a character. And we don't want the space in the email address. So we're going to -1 character and close our bracket. So that there has got our Rosie. It's not in lowercase or anything like we wanted in the emails. So we just need to look at this formula and figure out where we want this to be. So in here, we originally got rid of, we had our lower, but we got rid of our space. So it was Rosie Shiloh, one word. We're actually going to get rid of our substitute here because we won't need it anymore. And we're going to replace it with this formula here. So I'm going to copy this formula and I'm going to jump back in here. Now we still want the concatenate because we're joining. We still want it all to be lowercase because we don't want a capital R in Rosie, but we don't want to substitute our space anymore. We want to completely replace Rosie Shiloh, one word lowercase with Rosie lowercase. So I'm going to copy, well, I'm going to cut this substitute, the open bracket and its related close bracket. Paste that in there. And now we don't need that anymore. We've got all first names for our email addresses. Anyone have any questions on that? How's everyone going following at home? Is it working for you as well? Cool. All right, so in this one, I'm going to teach you a little bit about data validation, how to use VLOOKUPs with a match function. So we did look at VLOOKUPs on how to bring across the next column, but we're going to look at what if we don't know what column we want to use. It's going to be based on variable data. So for this one, I'll show you how to do an average formula. If you've got data that's not consistent, like here, we've got, thanks Paula, luckily it's recorded. So we've got population data from 2011, 2018 and 2020, but let's say we just want to find out a middle range. An average formula is really handy and it's exactly how it sounds. You want the average and then you can pick as much information as you want to include in that average data. I'm going to make this wider so I can tick cells. So if I just wanted the average between 2011, comma, and 2018, I could close my bracket and finish it there, or I can get the average of what the population was in these three. Average is a good figure just to have. Sometimes they do want to know the average uptake of something or whatever, and it's a really easy formula to do. you don't have to select each individual cell. If you wanted to find the average population over these amount of cities, you can highlight the whole area. It's going to give you the average. For this though, I'm just going to use these three. I did a typo, but it fixed it for me. I'm going to copy, paste special values. This is just so that we've got some data to play with. Okay. So we've got 4 different years where we've got population data here. And we can do a VLOOKUP to find out what the population is for a specific period. Now, data validation, basically it validates whether or not text can go in a particular cell. So you have the option to say, I only want yes or no to be available, or I only want population 2011, 2014, 2018, 2020 to be in there. Data validation can be really useful, for example, if you're, and you'll see this later on, it helps to avoid typos where information relying on these cells is looking at that information. So it really enables you to restrict what can go into a cell. Data validation can be done a few different ways. So I'll select in here, and this is over on the data tab up the top, and we go to data validation. In this, I'm going to show you how to we're just going to work with lists. I'm not going to go through everything, but with lists, you have the option to type in what you want people to be able to say or to be able to select. So I can type in yes and no and hit OK. Now you get this little drop down box, and the only options that can be put in there are yes or no. If anyone types, they'll get an error to say it's restricted, you can only have what's in the drop down box. That's handy if you only have a couple of things you want, but if there's going to be a lot of information, so let's say in this instance, we want them to be able to pick a city. You don't want to type all those cities up. So in the source, you can actually press this little up arrow and then go across and select all of the cities. You'll pick your down arrow so it opens the box again and hit OK. Now that cell's only options are going to be cities. It won't let them type in a city that doesn't exist. So if you've got a client that only services some service areas and they want to, someone calls or wants to place a booking, you can restrict it. So sorry, it's not on our list. We don't service that area. So that one's handy. It also works across cells. So for this one, instead of my source being vertical, I want my source to be horizontal across this population here. Now that gives me the option. Let's go back here. I can pick the population data. So now that we've got restricted data that can go into that cell, we can use our VLOOKUPs. I'm going to make these a little bit smaller so we can have everything on the same page. So with VLOOKUPs, I did show you how to do them across one column. For this one, I'll show you how to do across more columns. So in this case, we're going to look at, let's get our cities back. If I want to find the population in 2018 of Launceston, I can do a VLOOKUP. I want to look up what the value of Launceston was, and then I put in my comma. Now I've got to start in the column that Launceston's going to be in. So that's this one here. But I want the population data for 2018. So I'll go across. Now you can see just above or just to the right of my mouse, it's actually counting the columns for me. So you can see it's got 104 blah, blah, blah times 5C. That means you've covered 5 columns. So if you're covering 150 columns, it'll count it for you as long as you don't unclick your button. So I know that the column I want it to return the data is 5 columns. So when I untick, that disappears. So keep your button pressed until you've figured out what column you want. Again, you're going to do a comma, and then I want column 5 to return the results, and I want it a 0 variation exact match. That's going to bring me, when I click and drag this down here, it's going to bring me the population data for 2018 for all of these cities that I assigned before. That's all well and good, but that's only bringing me 2018. If someone here changes this to 2014, we want these to update, and that's where the match formula comes in handy. So we've specifically said we want column 5 to return our results, which was this one here. But what if they've changed this to 2014? We want it to return column 4, but we've hard-coded 5. So instead of this here, we're going to actually do a match formula. So we're going to tell it, and I'm just going to make it across 2020 as well. So if you want to add more data, you can see that this goes from column N to R, but I want to include 2020 data as well. I can change this and tell it I want it to go all the way to S, and that'll include that column. Copy that down. So I don't want it to bring back column 5 every time. I want it to bring back whatever column this data validation cell matches. So in my formula, I'm going to do the word match and tab, and that'll open up the bracket for me. I'm going to match this cell here. Now, you'll notice that I've just been putting in, I'm going to escape to show you the example, but when I click and drag, Excel automatically knows that when I go down to this one, I want it to look at this cell. And when I go right down to here, I want it to look at this cell. Now that we're matching it to something that's not variable with the city, we want it to look at this population relating to the city. We're matching here. We want to make sure that we hard code that formula reference. So in here, we still want it to look at the city. We're going to match, and the lookup value that we're matching is this. So we want whatever column matches here. Now F1, if I click and drag that formula down, that's going to change to F2, F3, F4, F5. I don't want that to move. So I can put a dollar value in front of the 1, and that's going to say it's always going to be row 1. It's never going to change no matter how far I drag it. So that basically hard codes and says, don't click and drag this particular formula. This C2 will still go down with the formula, but because I've put the dollar sign between 1, this will always stay at row 1. Then I'm going to pop in my comma. Now a lookup array. Lookup array is similar to how, whoop, someone unmuted, is there a question? No?
No, all good.
Okay. So the lookup array is where we're going to look for this information. Now because, excuse me, our VLOOKUP starts from column N and ends in column S, our array has to match that. So we just highlight across to here, because we're only looking in the headings, but we're looking from start to finish. We're going to do our comma again, and again we're going to put a 0 because we want it to be an exact match, and we're going to close our bracket and enter. So now when I pull this one down, oh, one thing I didn't show you, this column array here, again, Excel's going to remember, I will show you how it works actually. Excel's going to remember that because we've clicked it down, we're going to pull that down with us. So our population stayed up there because we hard coded it with the dollar, but I didn't do that with the lookup array. So I can actually go back into this formula, and in N1 to S1, if I highlight that, the other way to do it is to press F4, and it'll put your dollars in for you. And hit enter, and I can pull that down. So that's telling me, oh, the city is coming down with the formula, but the population and the lookup array is staying in cell 1. So now I should be able to change these, and it's going to change the population based on what the population is in there at those areas for the year that we've picked up the top. So match can be really helpful, especially if you're looking for financial data. You might want to look at how much Hanna earned in July, and you've got a whole spreadsheet with hundreds of people, how much they earned in different months of the year. So there's a lot of different reasons and different ways you can use this. Did anyone have any questions on that particular thing before I move on? And did everyone want me to move on? I know we're sort of hitting to an hour, but I can do another one. I've got a lot more to show, so it's up to you guys.
If you do one more, and then if you've got a lot more, we can schedule another session.
I think we might need to do that. I've got 2 more tabs.
Yeah. That would be perfect.
Cool. So, all right, I'll just show you this information then. It's more to do with formatting and making things pretty and making things stand out. So it's not to do with all the fandangled formula stuff. And it's conditional formatting. So there might be, you might want to highlight things for a certain reason so they stand out to you. So in this example, I'm going to show you how to highlight based on a value. So if we highlight the whole column and we go back to our home tab here, you've got an option called conditional formatting. And conditional formatting can highlight cell rules based on different reasons. For this one, I'm going to show you if population's over a certain amount, highlight different colors, and then how to sort the colors so that they work basically. So in this case, anyone greater than 100,000 is going to be a light red with a dark red text. I'm going to do that again. Anyone greater than 50,000, I want them to be yellow. I'm going to do it again. Anything greater than 10,000, I want them to be green. And then I'm going to show you how to custom do it. So anything less than 10,000, I'm going to do a custom format. And then for my font, you can pick any font color. I'm going to go with a dark blue, and the fill, I'll go with a light blue. So that's all well and good. I've created my customs. There's not really anything under 10,000, it doesn't look like. I can change my population back to 2011 and nothing really changes. So why did that happen? And that's the order of our conditional formatting we need to adjust. So when I go into conditional formatting and manage my rules, I can tell it what to look for first. So I want it to look for anything that's above 10,000, 100,000. I want that to be my first rule because I want this one to show that it's above. I want this one to show that it's above. So I can move that using that arrow to the top. And I can do the same with all of my formulas here so that it looks for this one first. Then if that's not true, it looks at this one. If that's not true, it looks at this one, and so on. When I apply that, you can see that the colors change then. So that fits the rule of above 50, but it's less than 100,000, so it doesn't move to red yet. These colors will change depending on what you've picked here, I would hope, if my data is accurate. It moves around a little bit. If we had one that was 9,000, you can always muck around with your data. What was that, 2011? There we go. So we can see that one changed to blue because it's under, so I know that that formula worked. We don't really want it in the heading, so we can actually select that cell, remove a clear rule from the selected cell. Then we get our normal heading color, but all of our population colors change when they change figures. So that's how you can color based on a number. You can use it based on text. So if it has the word virtually yours in it, highlight it green or highlight it whatever. So that would be if the text contains a certain word, you can get it to highlight. One of the things that you might want to know though is, okay, I can see this one has this many. How do I go across and find who belongs to that. So we can get it to actually highlight the whole cell. And for this one, I'm actually going to do it based on the state. So we put in the states before. Now this, you can use a formula to tell it what to highlight and under what condition. So I'm just going to go up to conditional formatting and I'm going to create a new rule. And this rule here is going to be based on a formula. And I want if this cell, and I always start at number 1 because when you're telling it to do a whole column or a whole row, sorry, you want it to start from cell 1, otherwise it just goes all mucked up. It's a funny thing that happens. I want the formula to move with me, so I don't want it to be a $ before 1, and I want it if it equals New South Wales. The format, I'm going to do my blues again. And okay. You can see that did absolutely nothing. And that's basically because I'm telling it, because I was clicked in here, if this cell equals New South Wales, I want to make this cell blue. So you have to sort of set it up first and then go back in and edit it. So I'll go back up here and I'll manage my rule. And instead of it assigning just to that cell, I can delete that out and I can highlight all of this. So now if D1, but because 1 doesn't have the dollar value, it's going to go down with the formula, equals New South Wales. We're going to highlight all the rows, all the cells basically from A through to F. And if I apply that, another bugbear of Excel, it's going to automatically update it to the very last thing you have available, number. So we're just going to go back in and edit that back to 1 and apply it. And then you can see everything where New South Wales is in this column, it highlights the whole column. That's a really handy one to have when you're dealing with a lot of data, especially if it goes along the side. So I think that's it for now. That's all I really had for this first section. The numbers tabs goes with the tables tab. We work on 2 different ones, so I might set up a different webinar because Corinne Haynes is dead. She says I'm dead.
Yeah, my brain is like, if you teach me more now, the other stuff will fall out the back, and I would really hate that because this has got to be one of the most informative sessions in 15 years of Viva. I had like just such good teaching.
Oh, good.
Way. So amazing. Amazing. Oh my God.
I didn't know how much I'd be able to fit in an hour, but I'm glad I've got a little bit extra in case we need it. But yeah, I don't think we'll be doing any sheets, Google Sheets, but
not today.
Yeah,
no.
Not today. How did everyone go playing along from home?
See, Sam's brain is just fried. She can't even type.
Hanan.
So good, thanks, Hanna.
Excellent. Oh.
Looking up names. No, that was absolutely amazing. Thank goodness we were recording it, because yeah, now people can go back to that whenever they want a refresher.
Yep.
And look at how to do those formulas, and that was brilliant. It all made sense.
Awesome. Oh, good.
Yeah, and it all looks so pretty now.
Yeah, it does. Awesome.
When I've got the recorded one, so I can stop and start. But just watching that was really fascinating, and you know, just making. There's so many formulas you can do. It's great to learn just a few at a time, and get your head around those. But yeah, I think you've yourself up as the Excel guru.
Thank you. Well, I figured it's just easiest. This is the stuff I use every day. So if I'm using it, chances are everyone else is going to want to use it. So it really is a machine, Excel. You can make it do anything. So
amazing.
All right.
What did Sarah say? In numbers, do you have included? Also, the next session that we're going to run. How to not remove the 0 from a mobile number. Yeah,
that can be difficult. Excel's automatically going to want to do that. The only way I've found is to change the format of the whole cell, which you can do over here and force it to be a text, or just make sure you put spaces in. 0418 space, blah, 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 space, blah, blah, blah.
That's pain, isn't it?
It is. It is a pain, but yeah.
All these other wonderful things you can do.
There are a lot of wonderful things. Actually, what I might do, if everyone is keen, I've got a survey. I am looking to do Excel workshops, but I'm looking for some guidance on what's actually wanted. So
cool.
If I pop a link up, do you reckon in the chat, Rosie, or on the event?
In the Facebook group.
Okay, cool. I'll pop it there. It would be really handy to help me design exactly what you guys want, rather than just throwing stuff I think you should know.
Oh, we don't know what we don't know. I didn't know that I didn't know all this. Well, I knew I knew nothing.
Homework, Rosie. I'll expect your spreadsheet at the end of the week.
Maybe my kids were at school. Right now, no.
Fair enough. I'll give you an extension.
Thank you. Thank you so much for your time. That was absolutely...
That's okay.
And thanks, Hannah. Yeah, we look forward
to the
session.
Excellent. Well, if anyone does have any questions, it's probably best to put them on the event page, because everyone's probably going to have similar questions. So rather than privately messaging me, let's give everyone the information.
Yep, beautiful.
Awesome.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Beautiful day. And
you too.
No need to learn anything else. That was it.
Yep, rest of the day off.